Welcome all to the Snail Trail 4x4 podcast. If you like going off-roading in Toyotas, wrenching on Toyotas, camping in Toyotas, and maybe even poking a little bit of fun at Toyotas, and of course, hearing about how great welders are in Toyotas, then this is the podcast for you. That's right, ladies and germs. My name for everybody out there is Tyler. That's me. 4x4 Toyota Tyler, not to be confused with 4x4 Overloader Tyler or Overlander Tyler or Ford Toyota Tyler. All those names, like none of them really apply. I don't know why you guys keep saying them and using them. So joining me today in studio is a couple of fellas, but I have their mics turned off because this is my show today. No, I'm just kidding. We've got Jimmy over here, and we have podcast veteran back to the podcast is Mr. John Allen. So we'll get them their mics turned on. Sorry, they're unplugged. You guys can work on that, fiddle with it while I finish this up here. So, we're going to keep the intro here nice and short and sweet. We got a lot to talk about today. This is closing out welding month, a.k.a. my month, Tyler's month. That's right. Don't roll your eyes at me, you guys. Tyler's month, aka National Welding Month, is going on this month. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed everything. We got to sit down and talk with Sue and Chai Bunn from Bunn Trail Welders. We got to sit down and talk to Joe from Carnage Welder. And we got to talk with Ian from Wheel Every Weekend, who has a lot of anecdotal evidence for why you should carry a trail welder on the trail while you're off-roading. A lot of fun stories came up in that one. And then we've got John here to talk a little bit about stick welding and Premier Welders and some other welders and some more tips and tricks for welding on the trail, and then also a little bit about Sierra Trek. So you'll get in and hear why we have John here to talk about Sierra Trek in a little bit. It should be a fun episode to close out National Welding Month. Just to keep everybody on their toes, we are giving away a Bunn Trail Welder for this month's giveaway, April's giveaway here. So it's a $350 value. It's a kit 1, which is the Bunn Trail Welder. Comes with everything you need, and to hook up, you've got jumper cables for the batteries, you've got a ground cable, you've got the load cable for the spool. Really cool setup, 24 volt, 2 batteries in series welder. So comes also with a 2-pound spool of flux core wire, which is pretty cool. So pretty much everything you need to hook up to batteries and get going, except for some goggles of some sort, a hood, maybe some gloves, maybe a chipping hammer, a brush, and the batteries. So comes with the gun, all your cables, some spool wire, and some other swag there. They got a koozie and some stickers for everybody too. So check that out today. If you want to get entered in for the Bunn Trail Welder, make sure you go sign up for that either over on Patreon. We are going to keep that open, so the $10 tier is going to stay open on Patreon if you want to continue using it. And then there's also over on iRate. So if you go sign up on irate4x4.com, you also get access to a bunch of the fun stuff that we have planned for doing over at iRate 4x4. So all the announcements of, listener meetups, the giveaway each month, a lot of fun conversations going on about each episode are going on over at iRate 4x4. So make sure you sign up over there if you want to be entered in the giveaway and take part in all the fun interactions and shenanigans going on over there. So check it out. irate4x4.com. Thank you. Huge shout out to Sue and Chai for donating the Bunn Trail Welder for this month's giveaway. This week, Jimmy and I are heading out to Moab. So Thursday's episode might come out late. We're trying to get a really neat episode on Wednesday out in Moab. So we'll see if we get that done and if we can get the episode uploaded by Thursday. So if it comes out a little late on Thursday or it comes out Friday or Saturday or Sunday, something like that, I apologize, but it's going to be a very busy week out there in Moab. We got a lot of people to see, a lot of hands to kiss and babies to shake while we're out there in Moab. So be on the lookout for that to come in. Next month's giveaway is going to be freaking awesome. I'm not going to tell you guys what it is yet, but it is upwards of $1,000. So keep on your toes. We'll announce next month's giveaway for May, along with a really cool interview that's going to be coming with it as well. So be on the lookout for that. Next week, as we get back from Moab and get settled back in here, we'll start talking about May's giveaway. And that's all we're going to get into for the beginning of this show here. So I think Jimmy got the board figured out over there. Are you good? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we got the board all figured out. So technician, sound tech Jimmy has been working hard while I've been trying to ramble on and ad lib. I think I do a good job, right? I should get a raise. No, you don't need a raise. I need a raise. From my $0 an hour. Yeah, so cool. Let's get right on over to today's interview. It's going to be a fun one. We got John here in the studio. John has been here a couple times in the past, so hopefully you all enjoy what we got to talk about. And buckle up, Buttercup, and we'll be right on back with today's campfire discussion. Welcome back, ladies and all the gentle ladies out there. We are here in studio with a podcast veteran now, Mr. John Allen, welding fabricator, racer, president, leader, chair. God, what else can we put into this title here?
I think you covered enough. Even though he probably has more names or more hats underneath.
I was going to say, what other hats are you wearing over there, man?
Four-wheel drive related, that's close enough.
That's close enough,
Close enough.
Rubicon lover, Fordyce lover.
Yes. Barrett Lake. Got it.
Barrett Lake.
Have Barrett in there.
Yeah. Oh, man. So welcome back to the podcast, John. How are you been, man?
I'm well. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think last time, when was the last time we had you on? Was it a King of the Hammers 2 years ago?
I think it was King of the Hammers.
Two King of the Hammers ago, so a year and a half?
2 years ago, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, we got to talk with you about the 4800 car.
Yes.
And how all that was going.
Yes.
So updates since then for everybody. How's the 4800 coming along?
Well, we didn't make King of the Hammers this year. We had a lot. Mainly, let's just blame it on the pandemic and all the shortages.
Yeah, parts supplies. Yeah.
I got the aluminum to sheet the car just a couple weeks, and I had it on order for months.
Oh man!
So a lot of issues. Fortunately,
the new dashboard looked great, though.
It does. New dash. When we decided we weren't making KOH, we decided to move some batteries, and of course, it snowballed.
Yeah.
I am happy to report that the car will be ready for shock tuning in about 4 to 5 weeks.
Nice.
That close.
That's that'd be cool.
News.
Yes. So pretty excited to finish that.
So does that mean you're going out to Sturgis then?
No.
Oh, come on.
The Ultra 4 has gone through some changes here recently.
Just a couple.
And they did not. They put one schedule out, and then they changed it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For us guys that actually have to go to work every day, that makes it a little difficult when you plan for something and then it changes. That's a little rough.
Yeah, especially for union guys that have to have their schedule planned like a year in advance.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a lot of pull, but I don't have that much pull. So the goal is just get a lot more seat time and get the suspension dialed and hit 2023.
Cool.
So
nice. That'll be neat. Coming out for 2023.
Yes,
we'll be there rooting you on, man.
Yeah, I've missed a couple of years and I'm ready.
Yeah, so you got the itch back.
I've got the itch and I've put a ton of sweat labor into it. I've quit counting hours and days and whatnot. So
it's probably better for your health that way.
I can guarantee you that. I'm actually taking Friday off to work on the car all weekend.
Oh, nice. So, 3-day weekend working on it?
Yes.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that's the update on the on 4843.
Nice.
And I'm not it's coming out with a whole new look. It's all wrapped in aluminum. I'm finished.
Are you going away from the yellow color, the yellow theme, or?
No, the yellow's still there.
Okay.
I've painted all the panels with single stage enamel, or urethane, I mean. It looks really good. I built some custom toolboxes for it, but it's got a big hood, a full-size hood on it now. Mm-hmm. It's completely different. Okay. A different shade of yellow. It's not that sun yellow. I went with a pretty yellow this time.
Gotcha. Now, you guys were planning on redoing the engine. That got done, right?
No, it did not.
Oh, okay.
So my background in that is of course, my father owns a machine shop, and I was going to do the engine. Mm-hmm. My dad says, well, we can do it, but you can't get lifters.
Oh.
And you can't get rings. And there was something else because I walked into his shop and he had 3 LSs apart, mm-hmm. and he had a couple big block Chevys, a couple classics, a couple small blocks, some Pontiacs and whatnot, and he had like 10 engines apart. Uh-huh. And that's just not my dad.
Yeah,
he gets stuff in and out pretty fast. And I said, what's the deal? And he goes, I'm waiting on lifters and rings for everything.
Jeez.
Don't bring it in.
Yeah, keep it out of here.
Sit here. He says, does it run? I said, yeah. He says, then don't bring it in. He goes, he says, I don't know that I can guarantee it to have it done by the race.
Wow.
So they're still having some real lifter issues, a lot of lifter failures just in the aftermarket world.
Okay.
So I'm scared.
Yeah.
So when they get that stuff worked out, I'll pull the engine. Everything else is done except the engine, but it's still running, so hell with it.
Gotcha. So, which engine's in there right now then?
LS3.
Okay. LS3, you're running the Turbo 400 transmission or the?
No, it's a Maximum 480 LE, I think is what it is. Atlas. Yeah.
Okay. And you guys you're limited to the 37s being in the 4800 class.
37s, mm-hmm. 1 shock per corner.
1 shock per corner, yeah.
One of anything per corner.
Yeah. But you guys have a set of 40s that you run on there, right? For trail running?
We have a set of play tires, yes, 40s. We try to leave the 37s alone. We have 2 sets of 37s, and then we have a set of Red Label stickies.
Nice.
So they're pretty dead though. We need to get some new ones.
Gotcha. But, which axles you guys run in there? Let's get into some of the fun stuff because I don't think we've ever gone through the car. I think we've just talked about your experiences racing. So
after we broke both the axles front and rear in half at KOH, which we can talk about later, we ended up going with 40 spline Spider Tracks front and rear.
Yum.
The 3/8 wall,
mm-hmm.
heavy duty. Everything. That was quite an interesting build.
Mm-hmm.
I never seen a front and rear end come on 3 pallets.
Right? Yeah.
I did. You expect a lot of parts, and I knew what I was getting, but to have 3 pallets worth of parts come in, was a little sticker shock there.
Well, it's all the axle parts and then 1 pallet for each third member, right?
Yeah,
those things are so heavy.
Yes. And then we did Gearworks front and rear. We did a spool in the rear and an ARB in the front.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha. What was the decision there for the ARB in the front for the race car?
So coming from a crawling background, there was a lot of things that changed when you hit speed. Mm-hmm. And the car acts a little bit funny when you catch air. Now, we're not necessarily jumping the car, mm-hmm. but you do get a little bit of airborne coming off the whoops mm-hmm. and, driving at a higher rate of speed. Yeah. The front end gets light and you do catch a little bit of air.
The back end likes to come over the front end?
Not so much, but when you can turn the front end off, it just feels better. It really, truly does. And we don't need the air locker in the front in the desert sections. So it handles better. So we literally, the first year we had it, we left it off. We were on the first 100 miles. We came in the Cougar Buttes. We turned it on because we needed it. Got out of the Cougar Buttes. We flipped it off. We didn't turn it on until we got into Remote Pit 2A. And we came into 2A. We actually took some air out of the tires. It was our own little strategy. We took some air because we're rock crawlers. Mm-hmm. Took some air out of the tires. for that, because we knew the next 5 hours we were just going to be, beating ourselves through all the hammer trails.
Yep.
And we literally turned the car around and we pointed it toward the direction towards the trails, flipped the air locker on and left it on.
Okay.
We just drove.
Nice.
We never turned it off.
Yeah.
And when we came back to our last pit, we basically had a couple rock trails there, but we did turn the air locker on and off a couple times through that section. Aired up the tires because we knew we had a high speed section coming out. Yeah, we were coming out of Spooners and outer limits.
Gotcha.
And then flew back to
home base.
Home base.
That was the year that Race Ops was telling you guys that you weren't going to make it. You were timing out.
Yes,
but they didn't. Go ahead. And tell the story.
So. We got hung up in Jack North coming down, and we weren't broken. We were having a good day, but there was broken carnage everywhere. So we were walking the car down a line that we were winching downhill. Let's put it that way.
Jeez.
And the Jeep Gladiator with I think Eric Miller was driving it that year, and it was the first year of the Gladiator. So he was right behind me, and when I say right behind me, obviously it was 4,600. He's less than a Jeep length away, or a buggy length away. And Eric Miller's co-driver and we were helping each other out.
Okay,
literally, he'd help me, I'd help him. And it was kind of funny. Race Ops was watching us on TV on the live feed, and there was people screaming saying that Race Ops needed to do more to help clear things out, because there were so many broken rigs. And Race Ops comes over the radio and he says, well, it looks like the Gladiator, Eric Miller and 4843, they're helping each other. I suggest you do that because it looks like 4843 is going to be out in about 5 minutes. And the Gladiator is going to be
right
about
behind him,
1 minute behind him.
Yeah.
And that's what we did, and it worked, and we got out. So we got back in the car and we were headed, to finish. And they let us go. They said, "Okay, you're under power. You can. There's a chance you could finish." So as we're hauling back to Maine, Race Ops radioed us and they said, "You're going to time out." So we just drove back to camp.
Went back to camp instead. What did you find out when you got to camp?
That they allowed the Gladiator to finish. And I said, "How?" And obviously, we had to do. I think we had to finish up Spooners. So yes, it was different, but still. We were way ahead of them because we can go a lot faster than they can in the desert. Yeah. So it was like, really? Yeah. And my one of the other guys that I race with, he technically finished and he technically didn't finish. But because of the Gladiator, he was 3 minutes behind his cutoff time, but they extended it for the Gladiator.
Gotcha.
So they had to give it to him. They absolutely had to.
That's funny.
I get it. It was a major sponsor and whatnot. But we could have finished. We could have beat the damn Gladiator. Yeah. But we just came in. So.
Gotcha. All right. Well, cool. That's some of your fun stories. I want to hear how you broke, because you guys had Spider Trax axles in there before, didn't you, in the car?
Yes. So
how did you break front and rear axles, Spider Trax axles in half?
Yeah, that was that. So this is our first race, and I had pre-ran the car down in at Lasertown. Okay. Cody Wagner had invited Art and I out, and we had went down there, and we had pre-ran everything, and Art had a kitchen fire or something, and he had to leave. So I finished all the pre-running, and so I was feeling pretty good about things. But, we've never done this, trying to get used to driving with a helmet on and a Hans device and, all that stuff. So we're in the car and we leave, start, finish. We have no idea what we're doing, and we had done enough pre-running between, being down there in November, and then we'd been down there the week before. We had done enough pre-running that we kind of knew where we wanted to go. Okay. So the wind is blowing. We're having a perfect day. The wind's blowing just enough to blow the dust out, so we're not eating dust. Nice, yeah. We get out on course. There's nobody in front of us. There's nobody behind us that we can see. We're having a great day. So we get to the Cougar Butte section, and it's just a carnage. People are rolled over. People don't know where to go. Well, we had pre-ran that section, and we knew we had about 3 lines. So when we get there, we picked the line that we wanted to take the least, but we drove by everybody. Which was legal, in the Cougar Beach. You can pick any line you want. They flag it off. You just have to be within the flags.
Stay within the flags, yeah.
And so we go through the section, and we get our sticker, and we're going. So we're in we're kind of in a wash, and we're kind of I called it a Disneyland ride because it was so rutted out. The car was just bouncing side by side.
Okay.
So we kind of come out of that, and we're kind of in between, and we're not going as fast as you think we should be going. We're coming up to speed. We're passing 30 miles an hour.
Okay.
And we see a small boulder up ahead.
Uh-oh.
And it kind of comes up, and we clip this boulder. We tried to avoid it, but we clipped this boulder, and the car went sideways. We didn't flip it or roll it, but the car went sideways and drug itself off the course.
Okay.
We had zero control. Well, what had happened is it had a Curry rear end differential in the rear.
Okay.
35 spline, true high 9, and then had a Spider Trax front. The housing broke in two.
Jeez.
Right where the pumpkin narrows down to the tube.
Okay.
There's a weld right there. It broke in two. The 35 spline axle comes out of the spool, turns as much as it can up against the coilover, and buries itself in the sand.
Wow.
And that's what drug us sideways through the
holy
cow. Through the dirt.
Jeez.
So I get out of the car, I come running around, I go, yeah, we're in trouble. So we walk back in this
Don't you have a welder on the car?
Well, we'll get to that. Okay. So we walk back to the car, or we walk back to see what we hit, and we hit a rock that was embedded in the ground that was as big as a Volkswagen.
Oh, jeez.
Like,
not this little boulder?
Not this little boulder. And so Art says, what are we going to do? I said, well, I can fix this. And he looked at me like I was half crazy.
Don't you know who I am?
And I said, because we had taken the car to Sierra Trek, and Greg from Premier Power Welder says, hey, I'd like to sponsor you guys and give you a big deal on really good deal on a welder, and I want my name on the car and so on. And I said, great, because it's getting a welder either way.
Yeah, one way or another.
Anything that I own is going to have a welder. So I straighten out the splines, I put the axle back in, and I weld this thing back together. Now, obviously, it's not straight. Things are twigs.
It's not perfect.
It's not perfect. So our goal is we'll run back to remote pit 1, and we'll call it.
Okay.
That's the plan. So I get it fixed, welded back together, and Art says, John, the front end's broken. And I said, it's a hell of a time for a joke, and I'm really, really not in the mood for it.
You're like, shut up, get in the car. We're leaving.
Said, we're leaving. He goes, well, you better go look at the front first. So I crawled under the front, and the tube had broke away. The Spider Trax tube had broke away from the pumpkin section.
Holy crap.
And it had, of course, it has the full ram, and it's leaking oil.
Okay.
So, get that under control. I take a piece of grade 8 all thread, and I wrap it around it, and I burn it in with some 6010 or whatever. And I weld that up, and I said, okay, new plan. We're limping home. We're done.
Screw the pits. We're going straight to camp.
We're just going straight to camp. And we were there for a long time. Obviously fixing the car. And so I joke with everybody and say, well, we broke the car in half. We accepted no help, and we drove the car back. So I think we did pretty good.
That's a pretty good,
So and I have minimal pictures of the whole thing, but I can tell you one thing: welding in a race suit is great. You don't get burned up.
Oh, there you go.
They do work.
They work great.
They work great. So. And even my race Nomex gloves, they work great as welding gloves,
Nice.
I unfortunately had to learn that the hard way.
Yeah.
I did end up replacing the gloves after that race, though.
Gotcha.
I did burn them up. But, that was my first King of the Hammers experience.
Breaking apart two pretty freaking beefy axles and putting them back together and getting back to camp.
Yes.
Wow.
I never figured the axle would go back in the spool because the axle was marred.
And you got it to go back in?
I got it to go back in. How? I have no idea.
Wow.
But it worked.
Wow. Impressive. So let's talk a little bit about what you do for a living if you want to. That way people can understand the experiences that you have behind you and how you're able to put together 2 axles in the middle of a desert, weld them back together, and get a car back to camp?
So I work in public transportation. I'm a senior. My actual official title would be senior fabricator.
Okay.
Obviously, we call it fabrication because we have a machine shop and a welding shop for public transportation down in the Bay Area. And we have big 70,000-pound trains. I ran their accident repair for many years when the cars would get derailed, hit things that I don't want to discuss.
Yeah.
And they're mainly built out of aluminum. So my background is a lot of aluminum repair, a lot of casting, a lot of dirty aluminum, tons of TIG work.
Yeah.
So that's kind of in a nutshell what I do.
Gotcha. How many years have you been doing that then? Like because I know you've been doing that job for a while, but I want to talk about like how many years have you been fabricating and working on vehicles? When did that start?
Do I have to say? Because then I'll age myself.
You're going to say what age you started. I'm guessing like pre 10 years old would be my guess.
I started going into my dad's machine shop in about the 5th grade.
Okay.
Working the summers.
It's about 10, 11.
And I was not a journeyman level machinist when I graduated high school, but I was pretty close.
Wow.
I knew I was really handy. I could run a lot of equipment.
Gotcha.
And I fooled with cars. And I had a Toyota 4-wheel drive and a Jeep. So
and airplanes.
Yeah, I do have a big airplane background. So out of high school, I went to aircraft maintenance school, got my A&P, and working for my father and owning a Jeep, I decided I needed to learn how to weld. So I learned how to MIG and TIG weld, and I seen a huge value in learning how to weld aluminum.
Yeah.
And at that time, 22R Toyotas and other things, but the 22R Toyotas for some reason rotted out this lower water jacket passage on the exhaust side. We couldn't buy new cylinder heads, and we probably welded up 5 to 10 a week.
Wow!
So there was a monetary value.
Yeah,
there.
Constant demand for.
There was not a lot of good people that could do it. There was only at that time 2 people I knew in the Bay Area that could do them.
Wow!
And I wanted to be number 3.
Yeah.
And I became number 3.
Nice.
That was a long, drawn-out process. So I went and I learned MIG and TIG. I took an exotic metals class after I got through TIG welding. And
what's an exotic metals class?
It was steel. It was Inconel, I think, moly, the different grades of stainless, and a ton of aluminum.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it was a course that he offered after you got through basic and you went through the advanced, and then you went into to more of the exotic metals.
Gotcha.
And we also did in the different materials and whatnot. We did 1 through 4G welding test.
Okay. What is that? So
1G is flat, 2 is horizontal, 3 is vertical up, 4 is overhead, and then 6G is pipe.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then I think they call it the F. Now this goes back a long time. I think it's F series, but 1 through 4F is T plates.
Okay.
And what the instructor would do is, like say for stick welding, you would weld 2 coupon plates of whatever thickness you were going for.
Okay.
You would bevel it out. We would gap it with a nickel. We would root it with 60-10, pass it with 70-18, depending on the thickness. We would grind it down smooth, and then we had a fixture we would put it in, and we would bend it into a complete U.
Oh, to see if it holds?
See if it holds. Yeah. And we would bend this into a complete U right at the weld. And then what the instructor would do, you broke a lot of plates in the beginning. Yeah. And then when the plates started not breaking, the instructor would put it in a bandsaw and cut it. And then would look at the grain, and they would acid test it. And they would do this, and you just kept, and when they would have you make probably 40 or 50 of these. And then when they weren't breaking consistently, then they would bring in a
X-ray,
and a welding inspector.
Gotcha.
He would watch you do it, then they would take it out and X-ray it.
Wow! And
then you could get your certification. And you had to do that for different rods in different positions.
Okay.
Once you got through the first one, if you did 3G and 4G, you didn't have to do the first 2 because it was vertical up and overhead.
Okay.
So they figured if you can do the 2 hardest positions, you can do you know, and then 6G
the easier ones. Yeah.
Then 6G was the same way. If you could do 6G,
they're like, oh, you can do everything. It's all
you're doing all the positions. You're just going around the pipe.
Yeah.
So that's where it was. So I did all the MIG and TIG, got really good with TIG. And then I told the instructor, I said, you know, I have this underhood welder on my Jeep. And I'd had it for a while, and I had taken a basic course. And I said, I want to become the guy.
Okay.
So
for underhood welders, or
well, no, I want to learn how to stick weld.
Gotcha.
I thought it was going to be, you know, I thought it was going to be, you know, something that I would use the rest of my life. So I took another, I think, 2.5 years of stick welding at night, 3 days a week, and I took his basic class, and then I took an advanced class, and then I took a pipe class, and then I took a stainless steel class where you weld stainless steel with stick.
Gotcha.
And although I haven't done that really since school, if you think stick welding's tough, try stainless steel stick. It's horrible.
Gotcha.
I got really frustrated with it, and he says, well, you're doing so good. And I said, no, I'm not. Then he put a bead beside mine, and then I decided I was doing really well.
Okay.
Because it does not lay down like 70-18 does, or 60-10. Totally different.
Okay.
But and I enjoyed doing that because it really, I think it really helped build that skill. And then the aluminum paid off because I was doing so much aluminum repair, you know, after work and whatnot.
Gotcha.
So it worked out well.
So here's
for the 22 hours.
Well, I did, you know, I remember some of the bad ones. I did Jaguars, 22 hours, a lot of Ford Escorts, they were little commute cars back in the day, and a whole variety. The Dodge Neon, we did a repair where we would weld it up, blown head gasket. But there was a million Toyota 22 Rs run around as delivery trucks, Toyota four-wheel drives, and they blew head gaskets. And I remember I would build 5 at a time on my workbench. We probably did 15 a week. So, because it was such a popular vehicle.
Yeah.
And there was zero new anything. You could not get any new cylinder heads or anything for it. So you were forced to fix them.
Gotcha.
And I've welded more 22R Toyotas than I did anything. Not that it was a bad design. It was just that lower water jacket. The 3VZE, the V6 that came out in 88. They weren't quite as bad as Toyota 22Rs, but I've welded up quite a few of those. But I did Hondas, and I did other style Toyotas. But I did a lot of 22Rs.
Yeah.
A lot of them.
So here's a question. I wasn't expecting the podcast to really go in this direction, but seeing as how it is National Welding Month, what is your insight on picking up welding as a trade? I mean, because that's what you did. Is welding a good spot for somebody who's, you know, coming up and they're like, I'm not sure what to do. You know, I want to get into a trade somewhere. Is welding one of the better ones to get into, or what's your thoughts on it?
I don't know if it's one of the better things to get into. I think trades in general are very good to get into right now. There's a national shortage of literally everything.
Yeah.
I'm a member of different welding sites and whatnot, and they really talk about the shortages of welders. I'm in a very unique area, but, you know, pipeliners and whatnot are needed. They make really good money. It's good work. Very, very talented individuals that do that. From other guys that I know that do it, a good welder gets treated like a king at different locations.
Gotcha.
And I can be honest with you, I can say that from firsthand experience.
Yeah.
It's not that I get away with murder, but I can tell an apprentice that's not clean enough, and nobody's going to argue with me.
Yeah.
And it's very much needed. You know, if you think about it, how many times a day somebody steps on, walks across, or drives, flies, whatever, with a weld. Every bridge, every, you know, high rise, every
anything
building,
made out of metal has welds on it. Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's an excellent trade.
Okay.
It's hot. There's, you know, you're playing with fire. You're going to catch yourself on fire. There's a lot of things about it that's not pleasant.
Well, I know quite a few people that would think that that's the goal of welding, is to play with fire and catch on fire.
Yes and no. But I mean, I've been called, you know, I've literally been called in on overtime and whatnot because I was the only guy that could do it.
Yeah.
And I remember a friend of mine who's a pipe welder. He said, you want to be the guy that is the only one that can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't understand what he said that I was young. I didn't understand what he said. I'm in that position now, and I get it.
Yeah.
Because I get called out from time to time, and, you're the only guy that can do it.
Well, when your specialty is dirty aluminum TIG welding, then
when
that's
your specialty is dirty aluminum cast TIG welding. Yeah. I pretty much like welding aluminum over anything.
Mm-hmm.
Aluminum is definitely my
your
my
go-to,
favorite,
your favorite.
go-to,
Yeah. Well, cool. Along with all of the other hats you're wearing that we've already kind of covered a little bit, last year you picked up being the chair of Sierra Trek as well.
Yes.
Which didn't happen last year.
It didn't happen in 2020.
Correct. Well, 20. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So last year is this year your first year then as chair?
So when you become chair, I got asked in 2019. I accepted it after Sierra Trek 2019. Mm-hmm. You co-chair for 2 years to learn it, and then you chair it for 2 years.
Gotcha. Okay.
So technically I chaired for 2020, although we canceled. And then I co-chaired for 2021,
mm-hmm.
which was, very successful.
Mm-hmm.
And now I am the chairman of 2022, 2023.
Gotcha. So this year and next year, you're the big dog.
Yes.
Running the show.
Yes.
Are you? How's the plans coming along? Is there any? Talk a little bit about Sierra Trek, because I think it's a really awesome event. It's on the Fordyce Creek Trail up here in Northern California, which is arguably the hardest, most difficult trail in Northern California. High Sierra granite up in the Sierras there outside of the gold country, gold mining areas. And it's not just about the hard trail, though.
No.
What all goes on?
So at Sierra Trek, we rent some private land
mm-hmm.
at Meadow Lake. We have a permanent dance floor that's set up there.
Mm-hmm.
We bring in a lowboy with a live band. We bring up all Cal4's cook trailer, their barbecue trailer. We set up a kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
We set up an actual bar.
Mm-hmm.
We set up an actual snack bar. The way our permitting works for the alcohol, you have to buy it with Trek money, which kind of like Monopoly money. So you trade in a real dollar for a phony dollar.
Yep.
That's how the permitting works.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be a member of Cal4 because that's how the insurance works.
Mm-hmm.
It falls under the clause of your food permits and your alcohol fall into the club.
Gotcha.
That,
So you have to be a member of the club in order to make sure everybody's covered.
You have to be a member of Cal4, not necessarily a off-road club, but a member of Cal4. So that gets you into the insurance. We have a huge raffle, and then we have various vendors that come up. The vendor show for this year is looking phenomenal.
Nice. There was a lot of vendors last year.
Yes, and I'm having most of them want to come back.
Nice. That's good.
I'm thinking that we're going to have just as many, if not a few more.
Okay.
So I actually got a report on that on my way up here. The gal putting that together for me, Amy, she's doing a phenomenal job, really working hard on that. There's a lot of stuff in the background that we have to do, permits and whatnot. That's been this week's thing is I have people doing the permits and whatnot. So back and forth on that. We have the Outer Limits Trail, which is the Bear Valley Loop Trail for people that don't want the toughness of the Fordyce Creek Trail.
Mm-hmm.
So we have that trail to offer. We have...
if you compare trail ratings on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you put Fordyce?
See, I don't do 1 to 10. I'm old school.
What's old school then?
Old school old school was 1 to 4.
Really?
And then they did, I remember when they did Upper and Lower Eldorado and Moab, they said we got to create the 5th one.
Okay.
This was over 20 years ago. And I went, and I think, because they did Pritchard Canyon was a 5. Pritchard Canyon and Upper and Lower Eldorados, I think, was 5. But on a scale of 1 to 10, I would say Bear Valley, or you're asking.
I'm asking Fordyce because I want people to get a reference point for Bear Valley, essentially.
I'm thinking that Fordyce, without any help, is a solid 8.
Yeah. That's low in my opinion. I was going to put it at 9.5.
Well, I mean, I don't know how many trails you did down in Johnson Valley.
Not many, true.
So, and I've done them all. Mm-hmm. And when I compare some of the stuff that I've done in the race buggy,
yeah,
and in my own Jeeps, but when I compare those trails to Ford Ice, I go, yeah. It's,
I mean, you're talking about Jack North, Sledge, all those guys are going to be...
Sledge. I mean, some of those have some big boulders in it. Let's just leave it at that.
Okay.
Look what, when Randy Slauson won a couple of years ago, the King's Garden or
the King's Graveyard, yeah.
I mean, I haven't even been there, and I seen it, and I went, God, I'm glad 4800's not going through there.
Yeah.
So that's what I have to compare it to, because, I've done all those I've done a large majority of the trails, in Moab.
So where would you put Bear Valley then?
Johnson Valley.
Yeah, where would you put Bear Valley?
I would probably put it at well, it's got bypasses for everything.
It does.
So a 4 if you went around, an honest 5.5 if you did some of the other obstacles.
Okay, I was thinking 4 to 5 right around there. So the main point I wanted to get there is that you can come up and join in on this awesome party that happens out at Meadow Lake for 4 days, 5 days. It goes on Thursday through Sunday.
Thursday through Sunday. So 4 days.
So 4 days. And if you don't have a rig that's capable of doing Ford Ice, go do Bear Valley. Join the Outer Limits run.
Do Bear Valley. We do what is it? The river run where we go down 543 of the Ford Ice Trail and then back up.
Yep, that happens a couple days. Typically.
That happens a couple days. They do multiple SUV runs. They do an overnight one, and then they do just some scenic runs and whatnot. And those are popular. Yeah. And then we have ATV runs. Yeah. ATV
side by sides now.
Yeah. Side by UTVs. And they were catering, to that crowd as well.
Nice. And there's the tour,
the historical SUV run.
Run, the historical one. One of my goals was to try to bring back the Star Trek. That has not worked out well.
Oh,
and there's some reasons behind that. And I was around when we did Star Trek, and I thought it would be kind of cool to bring back. The problem was back in the days when everything was street legal. If you think about it, we drove around.
Yeah.
It didn't matter if you had a Toyota, it didn't matter if you had a Land Cruiser, you had a Jeep, you drove around.
Start at camp, go up through Truckee, go all the way down to 80. Yep.
Well, we experimented with doing one a few years ago. And the young man who was leading it, I wasn't anything at that point, we were going to go. Well, we had the race buggy. I was in my TJ. And we had a bunch of other green stickered rigs.
Yeah.
We're used to going down the trail and then, doing that. Well, people were still coming up the trail.
That doesn't work too well.
That didn't work well. And it was something that we just didn't think about. It had been so long since we had done Star Trek, and it had been so long, nobody thought about it.
Yeah.
And I was standing there and I went, I forgot about that little part.
Yeah.
And, because I've really seen a lot of changes. And you guys are Toyota guys. They used to have a, let's call it a caliper built out of plastic pipe. And they would gauge the length of the truck. And then you had to drive through poles back in the day because it was too wide. And I remember them going absolutely nuts over the Toyota Tacoma.
Really?
It was a little longer. It was a little wider. That's what they told me. I own a Toyota Tacoma right now, and I don't think it's any different than my buddy's 94 Toyota that my main wheeling partner back then. But that's what they said.
Interesting.
And I remember reading at the meeting, and I'm like, really? So, and of course, all that's changed.
Yeah.
We accept, all that. But that was kind of the thought process. And even on Jeepers Jamboree, they did that. Oh no, you can't have this because it's too long. And thinking about it today, we got to laugh about it.
Yeah.
And this is when the Tacoma come out, 96,
95, 96. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause mine's a 96. So anyway, it's just kind of funny that kind of went that way.
Yeah.
But, so my first time into Sierra Trek, I came in from the back and I see this big dance floor. And the food in this big party, and I'm in my Jeep, and I said, okay, I was still in high school. I said, "This is heaven right here."
Yeah.
And
my people, this is where I belong.
This is where I belong.
Yeah.
And a lot of people ask, why. There's also a positive in it is the proceeds. It's all volunteer. The proceeds go to keep the trails open.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's just the way it is. I mean, you guys were at our work party. It was 2020.
Yeah.
And
was it? Yeah, it was.
The food that you ate in the material was paid for by grants, by the forestry, by Cal4, by Friends of Fordyce. That money comes from somewhere, and putting on these events brings it.
Yep.
And that's just the way it is. And that's why, so you can go, you can buy some raffle tickets, you can have some fun, you can, drink our alcohol and dance and
have some goat's milk.
Have some goat's milk. We brought the goats back again this year.
Nice.
Awesome.
So that's why these events go on because
to raise some funds, get some funds back for our trails,
to go back into the trails, and it does. We have natural resource people, the people that go to the meetings, attorneys. These things cost money. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the things that we harp about here on the podcast is how much money it costs to keep trails open.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah, if you can't put in the volunteer hours to help keep a trail open, donate some money. So
and the funny thing is I hear from people that go, "Oh, I donate money." I'm not calling anybody a liar.
Yeah,
but they're not donating the same amount of money that they would if they went.
Yeah,
and I think people will look at it as this is my vacation. I'm having a good time, so I'm going to have a beer. I'm going to have buy $50, $100 worth of raffle tickets and so on. So.
Yeah. Cool. So as a Sierra Trek chair this year is your first year.
Yes.
Is there anything that you was like a big goal for you that you wanted to make sure happens or gets changed or are you? Yeah.
There's a few things that I'm doing. I think trying to make it better for the volunteers. I'm picking up the Cal4 trailer this weekend. We're outfitting it. We're putting lights in it. We're making where we put the poles for the tents and whatnot. We're building compartments. We're compartmentalizing things. So we're trying to do that. I took pictures of how we loaded the trailers last year. I'm going to have all those blown up, and I'm going to hang those up on the morning to try to make things a little bit more efficient.
Yeah, for tear down and cleanup time.
Tear down and clean up.
Gotcha.
I'm trying to map out because a lot of the knowledge, because there's a well there that Cal4 put in.
Yep.
So there's a well there. There's electricity, and a lot of the people that put this in, unfortunately, are getting very old.
I was going to say, there's only not too many people left that know where that well is.
So I found the pea gravel where the well is.
Oh, okay.
So I have family that's in the well drilling business, and I called them from up there and figured out the hints.
Okay.
But that's my goal. There's several people that said they would turn over some of those things to me.
That's good.
I'm trying to build the master catalog back.
Nice.
Jeff Dax and his wife Coral did a phenomenal job last year of building the book, a new book, and I'm trying to add some of the things that they were unable to do.
Gotcha.
So when I'm done, I want to hand a perfect book. Everything's there.
Yeah, so next person coming in can be like, okay, here's how we get permits. Here's how we do this. Here's how we get the toilets. Here's how...
toilets.
Yeah, the toilets. If there's one thing I'm changing from last year, the toilets. But I don't have a solid answer yet. I will actually hopefully have that resolved by Monday.
But if we change the toilets, then are we going to be able to have shitter races this year?
There should be no shit.
Okay.
I want nothing to do with hauling portable toilets in with it's oh god, like
race buggies.
It looked like a Smurf exploded in there when the guys got done towing those things.
Oh, that was so funny.
It's funny for you guys. It was not funny for me.
Oh yeah, I just got to walk by and look at it. I was like, I don't have to deal with this. I get to laugh all I want.
Oh god. We are planning to do some road work on the hill on Motorhome Hill.
Oh, nice.
Fill in some of those. The vice president of the North District is actually Jim Branham. He's heading that up. He's working on that end of it. I don't have much detail on that. So those are the things that we're trying to do.
Gotcha.
I thought the road in last year was great.
It is right there.
Up until you hit the county line or whatever that is.
Right there when you peak and before you start going down, you cross. There's that natural creek right there.
Yeah.
There's some pretty big holes for dragging trailers and whatnot. And if you went in and out in a 4-wheel drive or even in a 4-wheel drive towing a rig, I had zero issue getting in. Mm-hmm. But
I had issues getting out.
Yeah.
If you were a car, if you were 2-wheel drive, you might change that. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to do some work in there. They used to do a lot of logging in there, and the road was always perfect. Mm-hmm. So yeah,
they're not logging it anymore.
Not in recent years.
Okay, cool.
Cool. So everybody needs to come up and check out Sierra Trek this year.
Yes, we're taking money now.
Mm-hmm. Registration's open?
Registration's been open.
Cool.
We're things are filling up. I don't have the exact numbers with me. I won't get that till next week, but I can see the money going into the account. So yes, things are filling up.
Nice. Do you think that everything is going to fill up this year? And is it going to be no room available on some of the runs, or should people be concerned about that? Or?
I think there'll be some runs that are sold out.
Okay.
I get a lot of questions asked about the Fort Ice Trail. Mm-hmm. People are afraid of it.
Yeah.
They don't understand it. People are confused. Mm-hmm. If you have a rig that's properly set up on a reasonable tire for your wheelbase length, you'll do fine. We have all the manned winch hills. One thing I should talk about is the Forest Service went in with the spider tractor a couple days before Thanksgiving. They moved a lot of boulders around. I personally took Joe Chavez from the Tahoe National Forest in and showed him a bunch of concerned spots.
Okay.
I did that personally. We marked it, we flagged it, we GPS'd it. A lot of phone calls went back and forth to him. I know you were even on one of them. Mm-hmm. They did some dynamite work at Winch Hill 3. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the problem areas are now fixed.
Nice.
And it happens, erosion, big tires, buggy lines, and so on. So Joe's goal is for a 2-door JK with a winch, lockers, and 35s to go through with a struggle.
Gotcha. With a struggle. That's the goal. Okay.
With a struggle. And that's what he wants to keep the trail maintained to. I agree with that. Mm-hmm. A lot of people agree with that. Mm-hmm. And when I say with a struggle, meaning you're not going to fly through there. Yeah,
you're going to have to work and pay attention to your lines and maybe work at a couple obstacles and winch up a couple. Yeah.
You might have to. Mm-hmm. We stack a lot of boulders for the event. Mm-hmm. They get kicked out right after the event. We all know it, so if people flame me for saying that. But that's Joe's goal. I agree with that. A lot of us do. The people at Friends of Fort
I think that's a good goal. I mean, looking at the proclivity of tires and bigger tires nowadays, and you got a lot of 4-door Jeeps are running 37s or bigger, which is kind of in that same realm as a 2-door on 35s, right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I think that's a good goal to go for, and it keeps the trail difficult, but it also keeps the trail as a fun challenge for people that have decently built rigs. I mean, we've got JLs coming from factories on 34, almost 35s now. You can fit 35s under without any modifications whatsoever.
Yes.
Broncos are coming out and you can fit 37s under them without any issues, without any modifications. So,
and it's a beautiful trail. I mean, don't ask me which one of the 3 trails that we mentioned earlier is my favorite, as I don't have one. I love them all. Yeah. I love them all for different reasons.
They're different trails.
Different trails. But Fort Ice is challenging and it's a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. It really is. And it's, all three of those trails and not knocking other trails in California, but those 3 trails have some awesome beauty. Yeah. The beauty there is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
And it's challenging.
Yeah. So what happens when you break on one of those trails? What do you have with you to take care of those breaks?
So, as a disclaimer, we have a welding permit for the trails.
Okay.
So, we actually have the correct permits.
Nice.
From the Forest Service. I signed last year's, and I'm sure I'll sign this year's. But that's actually a permit for welding on the trail.
Okay. I didn't know that there was one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is that to cover an issue for the club? Like, what if it's an individual?
Well...
Like, what if I'm out there wheeling and I break down and I need to weld?
The way it's been explained to me...
Okay.
Is it's like a fire permit.
Yes.
So I have a good friend of mine that lives out of Quincy, and he has a service truck with a welding machine on the back, and he works on logging equipment and whatnot. And he has to get a welding permit every year to weld. And I believe, I could be wrong, that it kind of does follow like the fire permit. They can pull it if they so deem so. It's a little different. They want you to have some water, fire extinguishers, shovel, and so on, because it's not a campfire. It's different. It's probably a little easier to get. And let's face it, we don't want to weld on the trail, but everybody wants a campfire, and it doesn't matter what time of year it is. That's just the way it is.
Right.
But we do have the permit. So beyond that, I can't really answer many more questions. I've been involved in different sanctioned events before, and we've always got a welding.
Gotcha.
So
I'll have to look into that. I didn't realize
so
that was
does
one.
individuals need that? I mean, is that something that people should go out and try to get, or is it a safety net?
I can't answer that question accurately. Because every time I've ever gotten one, it was for a specific area.
Interesting. Okay.
And
how specific? I mean, is it like
particular trail
within a certain mile radius of where you're going?
Well, it's like our permit would cover us in the Tahoe National Forest, Fordyce, Bear Valley Loop. They name these things. And they name it for the event. I know my friend said that his permit was for the Plumas National Forest. So I don't know, but I doubt your Plumas National Forest would work.
We're going to Tahoe,
That's the way I read it and the way I understand it.
Right. So like if I wanted to have a permit for welding on Fordyce, I'd have to also get another permit for then welding in El Dorado National Forest for the Rubicon.
I'm going to guess yes. But I don't know that.
I'm assuming so as well.
Interesting.
I never even heard of that.
I didn't either.
I think they actually, I don't have my notes with me, but it is a physical welding permit. And that's what it says right on it.
Gotcha.
So.
Okay. What about you personally? If you, what kind of stuff do you personally carry on the trail to fix yourself, weld other people when you go out wheeling?
So I'm probably the only guy that carries, besides you,
that
carries two welders with him everywhere he goes.
And that's because of you.
That's because of me. So I've had Premier Welders since 93.
Wow.
Yeah.
How long have they been around?
I was told they came out in the very, very late 70s, early 80s.
Oh, they've been around that long.
They've been around a lot longer than what people think.
Yeah.
The earlier units, and I actually seen one. I actually got to touch one about 10 years ago. And it had like a battery pack to it. And I know talking to Greg from Premier, he talks just a tiny bit about it. We interviewed him last year at Sierra Trek. And he just touched on it just for a second.
Gotcha.
But they had these other ones, and I forget what it did, but they started making alternators for the original H1 Hummers.
Oh.
And they had a military contract.
Okay.
And those came out, I don't really know, but like in the 80s. So, and I remember watching Rick Russell videos and whatnot. He interviewed Pat, I can't say his last name, is like, started with a G, and he was one of the original founding fathers of it.
Yeah.
And it was Link Arc at the time.
Okay.
And if you put Link Arc in a Premier next to each other, they looked identical. It's because they were.
I've seen some pictures of the Link Arcs. Yeah.
I've welded with the Link Arcs. They're identical. And what it was two partners, they divorced, then they got back together.
Gotcha.
That's the Link Arc.
That's the Link Arc.
I gotcha.
So it was actually, it started as Link Arc, but it was the same partners.
Okay.
And I'm going back on memory and whatnot.
So was Premier / Link Arc, was that originally first an alternator or originally first a welder?
Both.
Okay.
Yes. I've welded with those two. It was popular somewhere in the 80s. Somebody came up with, you could put a second alternator on your vehicle. You could weld off it. Dave had one.
Oh, okay.
My friend Rod had one, a pipe welder friend of mine, that had a Jeep. And they both went to Premiers later in life.
Gotcha.
But the boxes were they were shaped different then. A little different than the box that you have and I have. And I have one of those boxes.
Okay.
And But so I went to a Jeep run in 91. I was in high school, and I saw my first Premier / Link Arc. I don't remember which one it was. There was a CJ7 with the hood open. And I seen it, and I fell in love.
Yeah.
I thought that was the coolest thing since sliced bread.
Yeah.
So I got my first one in about 93, and
is that the one that's currently on your CJ?
No.
Okay, you've replaced that one, or
so yes, and this is a little bit my fault and a little bit bad information.
Okay.
So I had something go wrong with the welder for all the use and abuse that it's been through. I am not complaining about it one bit. It went through hell and back. Fixed a lot of rigs.
Yeah.
And it went out, and I sent it to a guy in, he's right here, not too far from my work, down by Pacifica, somewhere in that area.
Okay, somewhere over there
It
in the
was
Bay Area.
one of the founding fathers' sons. And it was frustrating. He would talk to you for an hour on the phone, but it'd take 6 months to get a welder fixed by him. And I didn't realize at that time Greg was taking over Premier. So I was going to King of the Hammers and Moab in my CJ.
Okay.
And I said, I've had this welder for 20 some years. I'm just going to buy a new one. And I did. I ended up sending the other one to Greg, and he fixed it for me, the owner of Premier now.
Okay.
He fixed it for me, sent it back to me. So I have, I guess you'd say, a spare.
Yeah.
And then I put the one that's on my CJ now on there.
Gotcha. So you've got your CJ, your TJ, and the race car, all with Premiers in them?
Yes. I own 4 Premier welders and a Ready welder.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then what about your shop welders? How many of those do you got?
I have two Miller TIGs, 1 Miller MIG.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. I just think it's a fascinating system. Explain it, because we've gone over Premiers a little bit in the past. Essentially, it's a badass alternator with a power box that you get to hook some leads into, and you can run stick welding off of it.
Yes.
It's essentially what it is? Is there anything kind of finer details about them?
So what it is you're going to run a high amperage alternator.
Okay.
And it's going to be somewhere between 165 amps, and I think the largest they ever made was 220. Depending on the size of your vehicle, the size of your alternator, and so on is going to determine that.
Okay.
The small GM alternator that would be on a Chevy truck, and we're talking older stuff, stuff with a small block Chevy, big block Chevy, that one wire alternator that was very popular in the 80s and 90s, and even earlier than that. That alternator is going to be 165 amps.
Yep.
As you go forward, you can get different amperages. Like the one in my TJ, I special ordered a 200 amp alternator. I wanted a bigger one. That's a catch-22 right there for me personally.
Why is that a catch-22? Because I have the 165 in my 4Runner.
So the one in the TJ works phenomenal, but when you want to do something a little bit thinner, because with the fuel injection, you can't idle it down. The fuel injection is going to say, I'm either at idle or I'm here. It kind of jumps a little bit of space right there. And where the smaller amp alternator will work a little bit on the lower side better, but you're also sitting here screaming at the high side.
The high end, to get a lot of heat.
To get a lot of heat. So the TJ works phenomenal when you're really trying to burn something hot. But if you were trying to fix, say, an oil pan, it would be a little bit more difficult with my TJ.
Okay.
I didn't say I couldn't do it.
I said it would be more difficult. Gotcha.
Yeah. There's a lot of tricks we can do.
Well, I'm glad you explained that, because I'm like, why wouldn't you just want the biggest alternator possible? Like, then you could just get the most heat, get the most power. But it makes sense that if you have one that is too high, you can't do some of the smaller sides.
Yeah, it for whatever reason, in my experience, it doesn't. It's kind of like when the alternator kicks in. It kicks in at a certain amperage, and then it starts from there and goes up. That's kind of the best way I can explain it to you. I've kind of confirmed this with a meter too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm not talking out of turn here. I really tried to put the science behind it and tried to figure out what's
really going on
what's
here.
working
Yeah.
here. But I would prefer a bigger alternator because most of your stuff is going to be a heavier brake. And it's nicer to have the alternator. It's nicer to have the Jeep right above idle or the rig right above idle than like in my CJ when I'm sitting there, pegged out.
Screaming it. Yeah.
Screaming it.
Sure.
So that's why. So
Or you just need to wheel with both of you guys.
Exactly.
There you go.
So how it works is a lot of people ask, what's the whistle?
That's one of my favorite parts about it.
There's a whistle that comes with the alternator. These alternators are high frequency.
As opposed to what? What do alternators normally run? I mean, is there something besides high frequency alternators?
Oh yeah, there's just a standard alternator without the high frequency.
Gotcha.
And you look at my CJ as a prime example. It probably came with a 60 amp alternator originally. That ain't nothing.
No.
But before we electronic sized everything, alternators were small in vehicles. I mean, you go back even further into the 60s when they had generators. I mean, they were people talk about 25 amps. People would idle at a stop sign. I'm too young for that, but and the lights would dim. You'd step on the throttle, and you see that in classic cars. So that's high frequency. Okay. And we use high frequency a lot in TIG welding to start the arc. And I'll kind of explain a little bit about the high frequency and stick welding in a second. So coming off the alternator goes into a control box. And in that control box, they have 110, and then they have the DC side of it for the welding leads. So Premier does make a control box that has just welding leads. And the reason that they did that, I talked to Greg a few years ago at Sierra Truck, and he said, what do you think about that? And he was going after the market for things that are full under the hood now, basically anything new. So that's why he went with that. So you could have your welding and remember when, because you have the ability to run 110 and you have the ability to weld. What we didn't have in the 90s, we did not have M18 Makitas and these things. We didn't have it. It was non-existent.
I think it's a smart move. So, the big thing that I learned from your guys' interview with Wheeling Wine and Whiskey, you and Greg.
It was
last year's Sierra
episode
Truck.
118, by the way, if anybody's interested.
118 over on Wheeling Wine and Whiskey.
Okay, I haven't listened to it in a while.
Was that the 110 port is DC 110.
It's DC.
So you can't run variable speed stuff on it, but you can run on or off 110 AC devices. The other thing that I thought it was a great move in just making a box with just the welding leads and no 110 on it.
Yes, I agree.
Because of all the M18, the Milwaukees, the Makitas, the DeWalts, everything coming out, and the battery technology and tools coming out right now. I think that was a really smart move.
Yes, I agree. Now, the only downside to not having the 110, you know what it is?
Your wife can't plug her hair straightener into it.
She cannot run her hair dryer in it.
Or the blender for margaritas.
Or the blender. Yes, it will run a cheap turn it on hair dryer. I've proven it. We'll just leave it at that. Okay.
Well, when you have a shower built into all your vehicles as well, it comes in handy being able to take a hair dryer. Yeah. So.
My wife can win the prettiest hair award on the trail.
I don't know. It's either her or Larry.
That's true. That guy can work on a rig for 3 hours and be clean. Right. And I look like Pigpen after 2 minutes. So, but anyway, you have the control box. You have Premier sends a big veneer throttle. If there's any pilots in the room, it looks just like a mixture control on an airplane.
Okay.
That's exactly what it looks like, is a mixture control in an airplane. I think I told you to use the bicycle.
Yeah. I didn't like how big it was. I was like, it's going to stick out all over the place. It takes up so much space.
I put one in my original CJ and I took it out and put the bicycle, pretty common one.
Yeah.
So, and I did that, or I should say my dad did that in his Jeep because he has a Premier.
Okay.
So within a half a mile radius of my house, there's five
Premier Welders.
Wow.
Yeah.
So kind of funny, a little trivia there. So you plug your leads in, there's a selector switch. The old ones had a high and low side to them. The newer ones don't. It's just welder on, and then the power tool
side, yeah.
And then you adjust your RPM to whatever rod you're running, rod size, thickness, and
what you're welding to.
The flux on the rod, what type of rod, what you're welding to is all going to determine what that is. So you adjust it and go to welding.
The RPMs of your vehicle.
The RPMs of your vehicle.
Yeah, but that's where the throttle cable comes in, the bike shifter cable.
The bike shifter cable. Got it. So so how it works is when you turn on the welding machine, I turn everything off in my vehicle, radio, everything. The only thing I run, like in my CJ, I run electric fans. So obviously I got to run the electric fans and then the engine, because everything is going to come out of the battery. I've welded for a long time. I've never had any dead battery issues. If I know I'm going to be welding for a really long time, and especially in my CJ, where I have electric fans, I'm going to be pulling amps for the electric fans, I will turn the welder off when I'm doing other things and let the battery get used. But I've had no issues. And the TJ, I don't worry about it because I don't have electric fans.
Okay.
Okay. So, that's the other thing people got to remember when you run a Premier is that when the Premier is switched on for the welder, it now takes control of the alternator.
Yes.
And the alternator no longer charges your batteries. No. So your vehicle, everything you have going on in your vehicle, aside from the welder, is running strictly off your batteries.
Yes.
So you just got to keep that in mind.
Yes. And it's not a big deal.
It's not really a big deal. Your vehicle does generally, if you're smart, you turn off your 1,000-watt amp for your sub and everything. You turn all that off. Turn off your music. Turn off the air conditioning fans, everything inside. Your vehicle does not pull a lot of power. So,
and then the high frequency.
It sings to you.
It sings to you, but what's interesting about high frequency is it helps with starting of the arc.
Oh, is that the main reason why they chose to do high frequency alternators? Or
no, they use frequency over amps to create the heat.
Okay,
so it aids in that. That used to be a big selling point on them when you'd go to the shows, and they would have it set up and whatnot. But they use frequency so they don't have to have as many amps.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then that really helps starting the arc. The Premier starts, it depends on what style of welding machine you have in a shop or at your house. Because some of the more modern inverter machines have settings where for 60, 10, 70, 18 that are hard to start a rod that spike the voltage. If you're running a transformer-based machine and older equipment, it doesn't have that. The Premier will start better than
an older transformer machine.
An older transformer machine. I demoed one to a pipe welder one time, and I saw. And years ago, they used to have a program before Greg owned it, where you were a dealer, and I was a dealer. I was the largest dealer in Northern California for like 10 years, and I would demo it, and I had a guy come out and he ran it. He ran my welder, and he says, I've been a pipe welder, for 40 years, and he had used all this old school equipment. He says, and that arc started easier than any welder I ever started. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Put one in your truck if you're a pipe welder and just use that. Run that off the job
I wouldn't
site.
do that, but and it will get hot. Greg says you can put ice around your alternator, and whatnot. They're very, very robust.
Yeah.
So that's how they work in a nutshell.
Nice. Yeah. So if you have, since you have such a huge experience of welding on the trails, if it came down to different styles of welders, like something like the bun trail welder, ready welder, or something you're pulling the batteries on, versus say something like the Carnage, where it's all in one package, neat package, or a Premier that's kind of built into your vehicle, an under hood welder. I think we know what your choice is, but I want to know why. What would your choice be and why for those?
I guess as a disclaimer, there's no bad system out there. Beyond welding with a couple of car batteries wired into a little series circuit, which doesn't work real well. You get a couple rods out of it, and that's about it. There's no bad system. They all have a plus and a minus.
Okay.
My personal opinion, the ability to stick weld gives you a lot broader range.
In terms of what?
Of
what
what you
bigger
can
range?
fix.
Okay.
Simple as that. You can do the chances of you bringing a gas bottle for your ready welder, because a ready welder, I own a ready welder. You can run a gas in 2 batteries, and you can do traditional short arc MIG. So it's a spool gun. So does that mean you could have a bottle of argon and you could run aluminum? Sure. Could you bring that same bottle and do stainless steel? Absolutely. Could you do steel? Absolutely. What is the chances you're going to have a little bottle, a regulator, and 5 spools of wire?
Yeah.
Probably 0. You can weld, and a lot of people don't realize this, you can weld aluminum with a stick welder.
Really?
Absolutely.
Oh, no, that's true. They do have aluminum rod.
I have aluminum rod. I have it in both my Jeeps.
Yeah.
And I don't do a lot of it, but in emergencies at work, we've done it quite a few times.
Okay.
Cars out on main line, a train car, it breaks down, it has an issue, we have to do some aluminum welding. I don't have a high freak TIG there.
The train breaks a couple of new axles. You got to get it back to camp. You just
we would use stick welders on the back of a high railed vehicle, glue it back together enough to get it into a shop.
Yeah,
that has happened not only to me, other places around. So I'm fairly confident you could probably glue a bell housing or something like that back together.
Maybe a bunch of some of those new aluminum links that are coming out and getting really popular out on the trails.
So that's 70-75 not weldable.
Oh,
yes.
Okay. Didn't know that.
I would actually, one of these days, somebody's going to bend one and give it to me, and I'm going to prove it wrong. I ain't found an aluminum yet that I couldn't weld, but I want to try it, but I've been told you cannot weld them.
Interesting. Okay.
But I don't know the science behind it.
Okay.
So, but good point. So I like the stick. I think I carry 7 different rods.
Wow. Okay.
For the different repairs. And that's why I personally...
I was about to ask what are the differences of all the rods, but that's a whole nother episode. we can have you back on for a stick welding episode.
We could talk about the different rods all day long.
Yeah.
and why you choose it in the I guess you'd say the science behind it, the facts behind it. But that is one area where you can really go fast in. You can have it. That's the cool thing with a MIG or with a TIG and a stick welder is the amount of rods.
Yeah. It just comes down to what rods you want to carry at that point, rather than carrying.
Exactly.
If you're running a spool gun or a wire feed, you're having to carry at minimum 2 pounds of spool wire.
Yes.
With you everywhere.
Yes.
Whereas with stick, you can carry 7 different rods. You just carry 3 or 4 of each, and
I carry a little bit more than that. But yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
The advantage to the spool guns is ease. It's MIG welding is the easiest welding to learn. I've taught a lot at the apprenticeship level at work. MIG welding is the easiest over TIG, over stick, some of the harder welds. So I see why people lean, into that. I have been in some, with the Premier, and it doesn't matter if you're running one of the spool guns off of it. I have been in a lot of situations where you've welded and had the unit running for a very long time. I don't want to say hours. I don't want to say 6 hours. I don't want to say anything like that. But it's ran for a very long time. I've had them hot. I was in the Rubicon once, and I burned every ounce of rod that I had.
That's a lot. You usually carry 5 to 10 pounds of rod at least.
I at that point I had 3 1-pounders.
Jeez.
And it's the reason I carry 5 because I borrowed. Fortunately for me, my dad was with me.
Okay.
And he had 1 pound of rod, and we finished up the job.
Wow.
We had a long weekend.
Yeah. Was that the time you rebuilt a frame there on the trail? Was that time, or was it? No,
that was actually the first big repair. No, this was a Toyota Land Cruiser that threw his steering box in the middle of Little Sluice, Big Sluice. This is 20 some years ago, probably in the late 90s. He knew he had a cracked frame, and he threw his entire Saginaw steering right on the trail. It wasn't stock Land Cruiser stuff.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful Land Cruiser, but it was a mess. And we welded on that thing all day. So that concerns me, like, with the batteries and whatnot. If I relied just on my spool gun, I would carry a second spool.
Okay, that's fair.
Simple enough.
Doesn't some rod need to be kept at a certain temperature or a certain humidity? Is that a concern?
No.
Okay.
So you're referring to 7018.
Okay. I'm
so
ignorant to rods.
So first and foremost, rods should be kept in a dry environment. Simple as that.
Okay.
7018, in a perfect world, if you were going to take a welding test, if you were going to send your work out for x-ray, you want to pull it out of an oven. The only place you're going to have an oven is in a shop environment. Or if they're doing pipeline work, they're going to set it up, prior to. 7018 is what we refer to as high-low, and it has low hydrogen. And the low hydrogen in the rod helps prevent cracking, cold cracking, and so on in the weld pool. It because of the low hydrogen, you can weld low carbon steels, medium carbon steels, and higher carbon steels with a little preheat and post heat and whatnot. There's some processes, but the rod will do it. Okay. And so if the rod is not at the temperature, you lose a little of that hydrogen bonding there, that capability. You lose a little bit of it if it's not at the temperature. If you keep the rod dry, you don't affect it. You don't affect it enough for a non-X-rayed, I'm in the field repair. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So I carry my rods, go to a welding shop. They make plastic tubes, not homemade tubes. They have a nice big thick rubber seal. Put your rods in there, close it up, and then I put a piece of tape around it. No moisture is going to get to my rods, period. And it doesn't matter if we're talking 6010, 6011, 6013, 7014. It doesn't matter. Any of those rods should not be around water, moisture. And let's face it, it snows. It does a lot of things. When I did a trail repair back in October, and I pretty much threw the rod away when I got home. That container was out. They had all got soaking wet. It went in the garbage. Because I knew I ruined it. That was my fault. But it was cold. We were trying to get off the trail. Guy was broken. Did what we had to do. But does that answer your question?
Yeah. I think we were both there on that trip.
Yep.
You were? Yes, I forgot about it. I knew Tyler was. I forgot you were there. Yeah. So, yes. But no, it doesn't affect it as much.
Okay.
If you're storing it in your garage on a shelf with the container open, it's junk.
Got to keep the container closed.
Yep.
Okay.
And it also, when it comes to you from a welding shop, however you buy it online, you buy it wherever, it just comes in a sealed can. That's it. It doesn't come heated. Yeah.
True.
You can put it in an oven and heat it, but it's not a big deal.
Cool.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah, that's good stuff, man. So we're getting down to kind of the end of the episode here. Is there anything else out there that you've kind of seen that, or any advice for welding out on the trails, welding in general, that you in all your experience with off-roading, anything that you think people could benefit and find some value in?
We could do a whole episode on cast steel.
Yeah.
Cast steel is not cast iron.
Nope.
It is not an engine block. It is not a rotor off your car. It is completely different.
What parts are typically made of cast steel? Because I think a lot of people, when they first getting into it and they hear, oh, this part is cast, they think automatically it's cast iron when it's not.
They see the roughness
parts?
of the casting. So in a Dana front end, rear end, the center section is cast steel. The pitman arm is cast steel. A lot of the steering boxes, the Saginaw type boxes, are cast steel.
How about your knuckles?
Your knuckles are cast steel. They're all weldable. I've done it many, many times.
Yep.
But people see that rough casting and they think it's cast iron. It's not cast iron. If that knuckle was cast iron, you would probably not get to the trail. It would blow out right at the ball joints. Cast iron is like one step above dirt. It's not good stuff at all.
It's not a good structural component.
You can weld a leaf spring, 5160. Now, I know people have gone more to coils. You're a Toyota group. I'm a CJ guy as well. You can weld 5160 spring steel.
Is that with a missile rod, or is that the 5160 is the rod?
So missile rod is the generic what they use for fixing 5160 spring steel.
Gotcha.
You can use 7018 because of that whole low hydrogen thing. You can use like 309, 316 stainless because it has more of a ductility. Now, it is not a permanent repair.
No.
Do not weld your leaf spring and think you're going to go run the Rubicon for the summer. You're going to get off the trail. I proved you could do it and run a week in Moab or week in King of the Hammers.
I was going to say, what happens though if you just beat the crap out of it, the living daylights out of it with a hammer for an hour?
You were probably there when I did that.
I wasn't, but that's a great story.
you do have to So
John's losing his mind. He's talking about relining molecules. I don't know. Just leave him be.
Yeah, I was. So when you weld spring steel, you're not going to have an oven. You're not going to be able to control the temperature. Or in spring steel or
cast steel.
Cast steel.
Okay.
You're not going to have an oven. There's things that you can do. I carry a little propane torch in and run it off a propane bottle. MAP gas would be better because it burns hotter. But I don't carry MAP gas. I have a barbecue. So you can kind of preheat it with that. Weld it. If you're in the desert, you do your post cool, stick it in the sand. I was in Rubicon Springs, did the same thing. I shoved it in the dirt, let it cool in the dirt, and then I literally beat it with a sledgehammer for probably 150 times. And that shocks it, it relieves it, stress relieves it, and it's a perfect repair. And the part that irritates me about repairs on the trails, and I've done many of them, is how many I see the next year with a trail repair on it. Oh, man, that drives me crazy.
You put my Saginaw steering box back on. 20 years later, it's still there, John. Great job, man.
I mean, I literally had a guy go, your weld failed. And he was like 2 years out of a repair that was sketchy to begin with. You know, it was like, I hope this guy gets back. And then he wheels it for 2 years and it failed again. I went, oh, man, I'm patting myself on the back. You know, I did a phenomenal job here. But, yeah, you know, fix it. Bring it home and fix it. In people, it doesn't matter which one of the welders, they look at it and they go, that's too much money to spend. It's worth its weight in gold. It's the cheapest thing you can put on your rig. Literally, it's the cheapest thing you can put on your rig. I personally, I'm a little old school in this. I know there's a lot of resources online, YouTube and whatnot for learning to weld. You cannot beat a little in-personal training from your local community college. And it is the cheapest training you can get. You don't have to buy the machine. You don't have to buy the rod. That's true. You don't have to buy the steel. And you get a fellow that's been out there pipe welding for a lot of years that can train you.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's how I learned. So you learn a lot about carbon, a little bit about blueprint reading, and get that experience that you need. Because nobody practices upside down. Let's just face the facts. Who wants to stand there and get showered with sparks? Yeah, nobody. Where you do it is in school because that's part of the curriculum. And you know, I hear people go all the time, you can't TIG weld upside down, you can't stick weld upside down. I personally think it's harder to weld vertical up than upside down.
Really?
When I learned to control vertical up with a stick welder, overhead was easy. But I had the art figured out. I had my control figured out. I had gone through, you know, it was difficult running, you know, 60-10, 70-18 vertical up, passing an x-ray, you know, getting that 2G certification. And when it came time to do overhead, I had my short arc down. I had control of what I had going on. I knew what I was looking for, and it just happened.
Nice.
But people aren't going to do that in the garage.
No.
And let's face it, what part of a rig is going to break where it's in your lap?
Yeah.
Frame break, a link break.
You're going to be laying down underneath it in awkward positions.
Yeah, you're going to have a rock shoved up places that you don't even want to discuss, and that is reality.
Yeah.
Good gear, a good helmet, whatever helmet you choose to do, not the 6 pairs of sunglasses, in a burnt face. Those are the things that I see. If you can't weld, I've probably ran 25 or 30 different machines. I've had guys come into camp. Hey, can somebody? I got the stuff.
Yeah, I just need someone to do it.
And hey, I got beer. Whatever. I don't drink, but that's the
Those are the times when John comes back to camp. He goes, "Hey, I got a 6-pack or a 12-pack of beer for everybody."
Yeah. Exactly.
Thanks, John.
So it doesn't hurt to have the stuff, even if you don't know how to use it. Because I've had a lot of people say, "Well, don't buy a welder if you don't know how to use it." I completely disagree.
Yeah.
We've said that as well. It's like, have the welder. Somebody passing by you will know how to weld.
Yeah.
Somebody took some stick welding class in high school when they were a teenager, and they can melt this back together enough to get you home.
Yeah.
Now,
exactly.
you might call AAA because you're worried about it, but somebody knows how to do it.
Right.
A MIG welder can fall his way through a little bit of stick welding if it's laying on the ground. Out of position, maybe not. But if it's an area where they can kind of get to it and whatnot, they can probably weld it up. So carry it, have it. That's and I've welded a lot of people. I have fixed a lot of different things. You can get extremely creative.
Yeah.
Extremely creative.
Yep. Like wrapping some grade 8 all thread, some thread all around an axle tubing to weld it back to your center section.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. That
Jeez.
one.
Do you carry a lot of excess bolts or metal or scrap or anything with you?
So what I do is all the drop that comes off my bandsaw, off a shear, I pick the little pieces out, little strap, and I throw it in my welding bag. Little pieces of plate. I clean them, prep them. If it's P&O, you don't have to worry about the mill scale. If it's not, I clean the mill scale off first because I know it's going to get used. I carry grade 8 bolts, and I only carry grade 8 bolts because I know the carbon that's in the bolts. You can use that as a filler if you need to. You can, I've had situations where you've welded the head of the bolt to something and used the bolt as a pivot point. You can get real creative. And the other thing that I carry is angle iron. I take 2 about 18-inch strips of angle iron, and I zip tie them together. And that works real good. You can use hose clamps and use it as a square for squaring up drive lines and some of those kind of items.
Yeah.
And that's some of the things that I do. I mean, I've watched people rob Peter to pay Paul. I don't believe in that. If you're building your own rig and you have a welder on your rig, I guarantee you have drop somewhere in your garage at your chop saw, whatnot. And I just take it and throw it in my bag and take it with me.
Yeah, a couple strips of flat iron, a couple strips of angle iron will take you a long ways.
It takes you a long ways. I personally choose 3/16 on everything because 3/16 will work if you need an 1/8-inch piece, and 3/16 will work if you got to
a 1/4 inch.
Do a 1/4 inch. It's that perfect in between. It's 186,000 or 190 thousandths or whatever it is, 186 I think. So it's in between the two. It's perfect, and it works really, really well for that. Random strips. Don't worry about the length because you're probably going to cut it anyway.
Yep.
So
cool. Great advice.
Awesome, man. Well, cool. We're going to wrap this episode up here. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing some knowledge bombs with everybody, talking about welding and helping us finish out National Welding Month.
It was a pleasure, guys.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, thank you.
So everybody come out, check out Sierra Trek. John will be out there. He'll probably be running around like a crazy person. We'll see if we can get him some drinks finally. And
August 11th through 13th.
Yes.
14th. Everybody goes home.
Yes. We'll get you out.
Cool. Yeah, come on out. There's a lot of trails out there available for that trip. There's a lot of support for that. We'll have lots of trail welders around to play with, and should be a lot of fun. And hopefully everybody enjoyed Welding Month this month. So
yeah, definitely.
Thanks again, John, for coming on. And if anybody wanted to, say if people did have some questions, are you open to them sending you some questions on like Instagram or something?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What's your Instagram handle?
CJ Fab Guy.
Cool. CJ _Fab Guy? Something like that. Look
Something like that.
Look for the picture of a white CJ to come up.
Yes, with an American flag on the hood.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I'm open for any questions, especially if it has anything to do with off-roading.
Cool. Jimmy, if people have questions for us, how can they get a hold of us?
Yeah, you can find us on Instagram. I'm over at Snail Trail 4x4. You can find Tyler at 4x4 Toyota Tyler. You can email us at Jimmy or Tyler at snailtrail4x4.com, or you can phone in at 916-345-4744.
Awesome. So with that, final words from everybody. Let's start with Jimmy.
I need a welder.
Yeah. John, final words for everybody out there?
I think I need another spool gun.
And with that, my friends, keep crawling.
So I got one for you.
Okay.
So a duck walks into a bar, and it walks up to the bartender, goes, "Hey bartender, do you have any grapes?" And the bartender says, "No, sorry duck, I don't have any grapes." You know, like, and the duck goes, "Okay, fine." And then he like waddles out of the bar. The next day, the duck comes back into the bar and goes, "Hey bartender, do you have any grapes?" And then the bartender says, "No, duck, I don't have any grapes." Like, whatever, get out of here.
Yeah.
And the duck goes, "Okay, fine," and waddles out of the bar. And then the third day comes along, and the duck comes waddling into the bar and goes, "Hey bartender, you got any grapes?" The bartender says, "No, duck, I don't have any grapes. And if you come back here again, I'm going to nail your beak to the bar." And the duck goes, "Okay, that's weird. Okay, fine." Waddles out of the bar. So the fourth day, the duck comes walking into the bar and goes, "Hey bartender, do you have any nails?" And the bartender says, "No." "Why?" He's like, "Well, then do you have any grapes?"
Got it.